Howdy, folks. It's Mr. Stansel again. So when we, first of all, let me preface to say this. When we looked at negative and positive production externalities, we focused on fossil fuels or petroleum for a reason, so that we could give you an example of how one product or one resource could be kind of argued either way as positive or negative, to show that there's a little bit of subjectivity to this. Well, when we think about consumption externalities, Mr. Linegar covered food as a junk food, which would be a negative consumption externality, but I'm going to define food as healthy food to show how, depending on how you define the product, could also impact on how you perceive it, whether to be positive or negative. So when we look at the product of food as healthy food as opposed to junk food, I think it changes our perception of the product from being more negative to actually this is a positive thing for society. So when we look at this on the model, this would be an example of a positive consumption externality. Because if we produce a bunch of healthy food and no one eats it, then what happens? The food rots. And how does that benefit anyone? It doesn't. So if we produce healthy food and consumers actually consume the healthy food, then they're going to be less susceptible to certain diseases such as cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, diabetes, obesity, things like this. And if people are not suffering from these kinds of diseases as much, then we can easily assume that they will not have as many medical costs and other debilitating kinds of costs. So therefore, they have more income left over, ceteris paribus, to do other things, like take their families to restaurants, maybe afford to do exciting things like go to the Texas State Fair that's coming up here pretty soon, because they're not having to deal with medical costs associated with their poor health because of their poor eating habits. So we want people to eat healthier so that they won't have as many debilitating diseases, they won't have as high medical expenses, and therefore they can be more active in the world and more participatory in bystanding markets. Remember, you gotta connect this not just to the environment or not just to people's health, but then you have to connect how a better environment or better health is better for other markets outside of the one we're looking at. That's the bystanding markets. We want to look at how the market of healthy foods can spill over into other markets in society and make them better. That's what this is about. So we can see here that the social benefits are going to be greater when it comes to healthy foods than the people actually consuming the healthy foods. And so we can see that because of that, the market price is below what the socially optimal price would be to incentivize a greater amount of healthy foods being produced relative to what's best for society, according to the law of supply, that is. All right, so what does this mean? Well, if I were eating more healthy foods, then I maybe would not have had the heart attack that I had a few years ago. And that heart attack, man, and the medical costs associated with it were pretty darn expensive. Because of that, it delayed me buying our family new mountain bikes because I had to pay off the $5,000, $6,000 of medical expenses, which delayed me buying our family new bikes because we buy expensive bikes. So how would we identify that harm to the bicycle market because of my medical costs, because of my poor eating habits? Where do we identify that in the model? Well, that's the dead weight loss triangle. We're always going to start at market equilibrium. We always start where the individual private consumers intersect with the individual private producers, and then we're going to draw a line to the social, where the social benefit and social cost intersect, and that is going to be boom right there. All right, and so there is our dead weight loss triangle, which represents the harms to other markets out in society that I'm not giving my money to because now I'm having to deal with medical costs associated with my cardiovascular disease because I ate too much Taco Bell. So how do we internalize this externality? How do we fix this problem? Do we impose a Pigouvian tax? Do we try to correct the situation by imposing an indirect, specific excise tax on the market? No. Because if we did that, we're shifting the supply line to the left, and that's going to bring our price closer to what's socially optimal, but it's going to bring the amount of healthy foods consumed and produced away from what's socially optimal. So we don't want that. So how do we achieve both the socially optimal price and the socially optimal quantity? The only way to do it is to internalize the externality. We have to put the responsibility on those who cause it, and that's the consumer in this case. So how do we get, in other words, how do we get consumers or more consumers to get into the market to eat more healthy food? Well, we can advertise the benefits of healthy food, but let's face it, sometimes we would rather eat something tasty than eat something disgusting, knowing that it's better for us. So how about we do this? What about a government program that gives people tax write-offs or gives people lower out-of-pockets and deductibles on their health insurance if they can prove that year on year they're losing a certain amount of weight or they're becoming healthier through, I don't know, a treadmill test or a cardiovascular test. And by proving that they're living healthier lives year on year, they get a reduction in their out-of-pockets on their health insurance covered by a government program. Maybe let's say that's a possibility. Would you want to eat healthier foods if that meant you didn't have to pay as much on your health insurance? That would create an incentive. That would create maybe more people willing to eat healthy foods, and that's what we want. So demand, or the marginal private benefit of eating healthy foods, will increase with the addition of these incentive programs. I'm just going to label it incent. I'll shorthand. Now, because the demand will increase, businesses that produce healthy foods will raise their price from PM to PIN. And because producers of healthy foods are raising their price, they're bringing in more financial capital that which they can then allocate to increase production in healthy foods from QM to QINT. And as a result, we have a new private intersection here. And so therefore, we have a new deadweight loss here. And so the harms to the bicycle market and the harms to other bystanding markets outside of this one are going to be minimized or lessened relative to what it was before, because you have people incentivized to eat healthier foods to avoid higher medical expenses, and as a result, they'll have more disposable income to go out and buy other things in other markets, thus benefiting the society as a whole. All right, guys, if you have any questions, we'll talk in class. Bye.